Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and this is my take 3 on the Simon Says Stamp Summertime Animals stamp set. I hadn't had a chance to use their flamingo background yet, and I've had the idea for a card mulling in the back of my mind, and then as usual with me, instead of just making the card, I went and made 4. So I had this large piece of Canson XL watercolor paper sitting on my desk from a previous project that I had cut into. So this is why I ended up making 4 cards, because I started trimming it down and ended up getting 4 card front pieces out of it. So I trimmed them down, and then I grabbed my Misty. This is the full, like the original Misty, because there's also a mini Misty that I show, and then you can actually get a huge one, which isn't my thing. This one's quite big, but since I was doing more than one card, I thought the Misty would just make it easier for stamping. So I pulled out the black foam pad that comes in the Misty that you use when you're using clear stamp. So I pulled that out, and then I coated each piece of this watercolor paper with my anti-static powder tool. And then I inked up the background stamp with Simon Says Stamp clear ink. This is their clear embossing ink, and it just dries slower. I've used it so much the last little while. I don't even reach for my Versamark anymore. I really like this ink. So stamped the background onto each of these pieces of watercolor cardstock, and then I coated each of the stamped images here with my detail white embossing powder, and I did this all at once. So I did all the stamping in one step, and then once I was done with that, I cleaned everything off and put away my Misty, because this thing takes up a fair bit of space on my desk. And that's just washi tape on the magnets. I do have a separate quick tip video about that and why I do that. So I did all that, and then I funneled the embossing powder back into the container so I could put the lid on, because I have been known to knock that over quite a bit. So all of these pieces of cardstock have embossing powder on them, but none of them are melted yet. And I do this all in one step as well. So I get my heat tool going and I melt all of the embossing powder. And I will say, doing all 4 backgrounds, like full backgrounds with embossing powder, it did actually get fairly warm in here. So just melted all of that, just took my time, got it all melted. It didn't take that long really, but did it all, made sure I got them all melted. I just moved around to where I was holding it, since it was from every single edge, all these backgrounds. So once I had everything melted, everything was done, I have a couple of different sizes of masonite board. This step isn't necessary, like per se, but since I was doing so many, I wanted to be able to move these around and not have them taking up space right on my desk here. So I just taped 2 of each of these backgrounds onto my little masonite board with just little pieces of tape. I didn't tape all the way around to keep them completely flat, because 1, that was going to take more time, and 2, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do on these backgrounds. I knew I wanted to add some watercolor, but I wasn't sure. I was just going to experiment. So I've actually got this piece of plastic comes with that background stamp. It's what the stamp itself is clinging to. So I kept that out and just put a piece of white cardstock kind of under it so I can create my own little palette here. And then I grabbed several different colors of distress inks. And I started off with Spun Sugar, Worn Lipstick, and Pink Raspberry, because since I'm doing flamingos, I was like, ooh, I need pink. And then I decided to mix it up a bit and add a yellow and an orange as well. So I've got some dried marigold and some scattered straw. And I've got my 2 containers of water, one for cleaning my brush and then one to just clean water. And I just grabbed a really large paintbrush. This is a size 12 brush. Yeah. And just kind of experimented, like kind of mixing colors together, adding more water, taking color off. I super sped this up. I didn't spend like super long on this, about maybe 10 to 15 minutes, something like that. But I super sped it up for the video. Otherwise, this video seriously would have been like a couple hours long. So I just kind of experimented, like adding water first and then the color, or adding just the color first, mixing some of the colors, you know, just had fun with it. Let it dry a little bit, just went back and forth to create all these different backgrounds. And then I set that aside to dry. And I had all these scraps of that watercolor paper left over from trimming off those backgrounds. So I pulled those out again, and I'm using the images from that Summertime Animals stamp set and doing the exact same thing. So I'm treating each piece with my anti-static powder tool. That just keeps the embossing powder from sticking to anything but the stamped images. So treated all those pieces and then just stamped these images multiple times. I'm still at this point, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do, but I wanted to make sure I had enough main images for the fronts of all 4 of these cards. So I stamped the bear a couple times, I stamped the flamingo multiple times, the pineapple and the popsicle. and then coated those all again with the same detail white embossing powder, melted all of those. So then I've got all these images on these scraps of cardstock, and I hadn't put away that little, or cleaned off that piece of plastic there for, that's got all the distress inks on it. And I'm gonna go and use those exact same distress inks to start watercoloring in these images. So instead of using that huge brush I use for the background, I'm gonna grab a smaller brush, and I'm using a silver size 4 brush to do all my watercoloring. And I stuck with the same colors, and then I just added a few more, which I'm going to use some hickory smoke for the bear, and then brush corduroy and twisted citron. And I will have all the colors listed on my blog with all the supplies used and everything like that. So to start off with, I'm just going to watercolor in the flamingos. So I was using those exact same pinks. And this is always, I think I've said this before in other videos, I love doing white heat embossing with the images, and then when you start coloring them in, and then the lines, like the detail starts to pop, because especially on camera, like you can barely see anything. But then once you start adding the color, everything just kind of starts to pop. So I did everything at once. I did all the flamingos at once, like their bodies, when I was using the pinks, and then I'd clean off my brush, and I did their the little area of their beaks, and then I did their legs. And then I moved on and did the 2 popsicles, and I just kind of mixed the oranges and the pinks together. And then for the bears, this is where I used the hickory smoke, and there was a little bit of pink mixed with it, but it just worked. I just went with it. So watercolored them in, and you could go back and do layering if you wanted, you know, layer the colors together, layer on some of the same colors for depth and all that. But since I was being a little nuts and making so many cards at once, I just kept it simple and just got the color on there. I think these images are cute enough that they speak for themselves, that it doesn't really matter anyway, you know, but you could take it, you know, it's another level up and really add some detail with the coloring. But I just wanted to get the color on, and I'm always just happy when the images and the details kind of start to pop with that color. So I did the bears, and then I did the pineapples. I mixed the hickory smoke and the scattered straw for that. And then for the green tops of the pineapples, that's where I used the twisted citron. So once I was done watercoloring in all the images, I'd let them dry. And then I'm running these through my Big Shot die cutting machine with the coordinating die set. So laying everything out, and then I'm just taping the dies into place with pieces of micropore tape, just so that those don't accidentally shift when I'm running through the machine, and then, you know, die cuts crooked and wrecks, you know, all the work I went to of watercoloring them. So I tape everything into place, and I'm able to die cut, you know, all 4 images at once. And then I just do this multiple times until everything is die cut. So once I've run this through my machine, it took like 3-4 passes altogether to get everything completely die cut. I set all those aside, and then I grabbed those backgrounds that I did in the beginning and decided to die cut all of those with the second largest die from Simon's Basic Rectangles die set. So just kind of lined that up how I wanted it, how I wanted the backgrounds to be on my card fronts, and ran all 4 of those through the machine with that second largest rectangle die. And then finally, since I had my machine out, I grabbed the, these are the large tags dies from Simon as well. And I ran that through my machine with some vellum paper, and ended up die cutting multiple tags. Like I ended up cutting 8 tags instead of 4, and you'll see why in a minute. So I've got all my die cutting done, so I can get my machine out of the way. And now I'm going on to figuring out what sentiments I want to use. And on one of my previous cards, I'd used the handwritten border stamp set. So it was already sitting here, so that's what made me gravitate towards it, because I just reach for whatever's handy. So I've got some scraps of black cardstock that I did the exact same thing as I did with all the other images. Treat it with the anti-static powder tool, stamped the sentiments with the clear embossing ink, and then embossed it with the detail embossing powder. So I chose what sentiments, and a couple of them I used only a part of the sentiment, and I used one sentiment from the Summertime Animals stamp set. So once I was done with all my stamping and embossing, I trimmed everything down with my paper trimmer. And then here's where why I chose to do 2 of each tag with the vellum. When I was playing around with the layout, trying to figure out what I was going to do, I found that the vellum, it just kind of faded into those backgrounds. So I decided to do 2 layers of vellum so that it gave a little bit more of a background to the main images, which you'll see at the end. And you still are able to see through it, to see all that watercoloring, because I didn't want to lose the detail. So I actually pulled out, this is the first time I have used eyelets in years. I can't remember the last time I used eyelets, but I still have some in my stash. So I pulled some silver eyelets out of my stash and used my Crocodile to set all these eyelets to attach these tags together because they're vellum. Adhesive generally shows through them. I could have used full sheets adhesive like my Xyron or whatever, but I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to add the eyelets anyway. I thought they would just kind of finish off the tops of these since they were layered. So layered all these tags together, set those eyelets, and then each tag along the bottom I used the Doodlebug Flamingo washi tape that I had got in a haul video a month or two ago, whenever it was. I've been like dying to use this washi tape for so long. That was another reason why I made these cards. I ended up making 4 too, because I'm like, ooh, I'm putting this washi tape to great use because it's so cute. So added that to the bottom of all the tags, and then assembled all these tags with the sentiments and all of the stamped and watercolored elements. And technically a person could just make, 1 or 2 cards and then have a couple of coordinating tags to add to a gift, whatever floats your boat. I decided to make all 4 of them into cards since I'd done all those backgrounds, but you get quite a bit of variety when you do things like this. And it was just fun kind of figuring out what I was going to, put on what tag and how to assemble it and all that. So I did a mix of adhering some of the elements flat to the tags with my Tombow Mono Multi. Some things I popped up a bit with foam tape. It just kind of depended on how I wanted the end result to be. So the bears I popped up with foam tape because they were larger. That was another reason too. The bears were larger, so it was easier to apply the foam tape, whereas the flamingos with all that fine detail, I wasn't going to bother and pop those up with foam tape. It was just easier to adhere flat to the tags. And once I was done with all that, I pulled out some baker's twine from my stash. This is Doodlebug Cupcake Twine. So just some light pink baker's twine. And doubled it up and then put it through each of the tags there from behind and then pulled it through. And I did that again to all 4 tags all in one step. And then to adhere the tags to my card fronts, I used foam tape again. And that's where like the washi tape came in handy, and then all those other elements. I just hid all this foam tape behind all the other elements because otherwise you would totally see all of that through this vellum. So just made sure to creatively hide that behind all the little images and the sentiments and the washi tape and that. And adhered all those into place, and then I would trim down all of the baker's twine to a little more reasonable length there, so it's not just kind of hanging weird on my card fronts. So once I had everything adhered, and with the flamingo one I had to be a little more creative with the foam tape there because again it's a smaller area. So that's where it was nice that I had that washi tape on there, so I could put a couple large pieces behind the washi tape and the sentiment. And then the flamingo, I had to be a little creative and cut down some smaller pieces of the foam tape there. Otherwise, you'd have like this big square of foam tape behind the flamingo. So got a little creative with that, and then adhered everything. I did the same layouts with all of them, just again, simplicity's sake, and trimmed everything down. And then to add my final embellishment, I could have just left them as is, but I couldn't leave well enough alone. And you guys know me and my sequin obsession, so I pulled out a bunch of sequins. And same thing, I will have these listed with the supplies. I used several different colors and sizes of Pretty Pink Posh sequins. And then I had a couple different shades of really bright pink ones from my stash that are from one of the I think the Craft Medley Princess pack. So I had all these sequins pulled out, and just kind of went around and figured out where I wanted to add them to each card front, and went nuts with the sequins. I could have added just 3 or, a small number, but I had all these sequins, had all these colors, had all these ideas. So yeah, sequin party all across the board. So sprinkled them basically pretty liberally across each card front, and then adhered them all into place with my multi-medium matte adhesive, and then set those aside to dry. And then while they were doing that, I started assembling all my card bases, which is just Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock that is cut to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I scored them at 5 1/2. So these are all top folding A2 cards, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I pulled out that flamingo washi tape again and just put it along the bottom of the inside of every card. And I had 4 little images left over from all of the watercoloring I had done. So I adhered just one of each image to the inside of the cards, and that was it for the insides. I didn't bother stamping sentiments, anything else. The washi tape and the image was enough, in my opinion, for this, since I went a little nuts with making so many. And you guys can see, like, I have this little small area of creative space and then just stuff everywhere. Like, my desk, couldn't even see the top of it by the time I was done. So to finish off these cards, I popped all these watercolor background panels onto the cards with even more foam tape, because go big or go home, and that finished off all the cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this rather lengthy video. Oh, and before I forget, I forgot about this step. To completely finish these off, I didn't like how with the flamingos, with the white embossing, you kind of can't really see the eyes and the tips of their beaks, which are supposed to be black. I could have just left it, but I thought how cool would it look if I made them black. And so I grabbed my Crystal Nouveau ebony black glitter, or yeah, crystal drops. Is that what they are called? Nouveau ebony black, yeah, crystal drops. And I coated the ends of the flamingo's beaks with that, and then added a dab to their eyes. And then while I was doing that, I was like, maybe the bears, you know, just to finish them off, I could do that too. So I did a really light dab of the same thing on the bear's eyes, and then set that aside completely to dry. And I think it just added that extra little bit of character and detail to these and made the flamingos pop out a lot more, in my opinion. So now the cards are done and they've had a chance to dry, and I've taken the pictures and all that, and now finishing this video. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post, where I will have all the pictures posted on my blog. I'll have picture links to all the supplies, like the colors of distress inks I use, the sequins, the stamps, all that fun stuff. So check out the description box below the video if you are interested in any of that, and all that info will be there. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping my videos, and for all the comments. I read all the comments. I respond as often as I possibly can, and I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you guys very, very soon in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.